The purpose of hill forts has long been an unsolved mystery in a way. There are 3,000 hill forts in the United Kingdom.
The same way, we need to think of a very different relationship between people and animals when we were living, in round houses and.
The wonder that Stonehenge still exists is because it's a big bunch of stones, but the wonder is far greater that the White Horse still exists. So that's more of a wonder of the world, if you like, in some senses than Stonehenge, because it's so fragile. It could have disappeared thousands of years ago.
Welcome to Segsbury Camp. About a year ago, I was some 6 miles over there filming at the White Horse, the Uffington White Horse, and I remember wondering if it's at all a wise thing to do, thinking that this has been, I think as horses go, I said, flogged to death. And I would say the media attention the White Horse got is probably equal to that of the sinking of the Titanic. Nevertheless, I did film, and it turned out to be my most successful video so far. And so far, so good, you might want to say, leave it at that. But no, I'm back. There had been some archaeological work done, where Charles agreed to be the mediator between, I think it's fair to say, the village and the archaeologists.
Yes, that's right, yeah.
Charles kindly agreed to be on the film, which I think was one of the reasons for its success. I'm quite sure.
I can't imagine why.
And he kindly agreed again to be part of the team today. Because you see, since then the book has come out. It's called Under the Shadow of Segsbury, or The Shadows of Segsbury by Cotswold Archeology. Today we're going to have a look at Segsbury Camp, that's given the book its name, walk around the premises and exchange a few thoughts on what life might have been for people here. And then we'll also go and see Paolo Guarino of Cotswold Archeology in Cirencester, who kindly agreed to give us an interview and tell us a bit more about who those people were and what's all that got to do with the White Horse.
Probably some kind of religion, if not organized religion as we know them, but they definitely had a world beyond their pottery,
yes,
beyond digging their pits.
That's right, which was very important to them.
Absolutely.
I mean, if you look at the White Horse, it was so important to a lot of people over 100 generations who scoured it and kept it, and yet it's something that is, it has no common day utility at all.
Yeah.
And yet they worked at it, they had festivals there, the people came from a long way around to look at it, and so it was important to them, and therefore the spiritual, if you call it spiritual, things beyond the everyday, getting through life and hunting and so on, were very important to them.
Absolutely.
And therefore I'm trying to find the connection between this little clue that we have in that grave as to somehow their spiritual yearnings, longings, etc., etc. I don't know if it can be found, but there was something a bit more complicated because there was a small child, I think, below, and then even, was it a dog?
Yeah, I think you're putting focus on the right thing, because in order to understand, not to fully explain, but to understand how important that burial is, you need to think of the fact that it was created as a process. It's not just a woman buried in a pit. We have a whole sequence of burials within the same pit. So there is a very clear sense of intentional action there. It's not just that we got a pit open, a rubbish pit open, let's put this. It was intentional. They were all sequences intentional. So at the base of the pit, there was a child, I think it was about a year-old child, and then these was covered by some earth, and then above it there was alpha dog. So the
Alpha dog.
yeah, and it wasn't. Yeah, but it was still in articulated position. So it was it wasn't just bits of dog bones.
Yeah.
It was a half of a
It was
dog body,
deliberately placed there.
deliberately placed, and then above this, then there was the female individual in almost sealing this burial procedure. Now we don't know how much time there was between each of these burials, but there is clearly an intention to make something particular about that pit. Well, there is a connection in the sense that it is another element to remind us that human beings have that element in their lives, right? Have that sphere of thoughts, feelings, etc. It goes beyond the daily.
And the dog
Yeah.
is so important because, of course, we've got a white horse, which is an animal. Here is a dog placed in this very serious part of
At least it's no coincidence that he's there. So obviously that was
it
a
didn't
conscious,
fall in there. Absolutely.
burial.
Yes.
I
So
think
the significance of the dog could give us some idea of the significance of the horse, you know.
I mean, and again, just as we were saying earlier about what we about the difference in which we consider human remains and the way Iron Age, or people in the Iron Age considered human remains, same probably the same way we need to think of a very different relationship between people and animals when we were living, in roundhouses and roundhouses. There are many people who think that roundhouses weren't just houses for humans, probably included areas for animals. So just
I mean that was.
so you do have a
just,
different relationship with
I'm
it.
just thinking of medieval times certainly, but I just thought my neighbours 30 years ago had the cows living right in the same house, divided by a corridor.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
it was their younger son who then separated things a bit more because he said he can't stand the stench anymore.
But of course,
Exactly, it's a different
So
relationship.
you don't have to go that far back.
the
Yes.
cows were part of their diet, basically. If you look at the Egyptians with a huge cat, the Sphinx, there is some similarity between the Sphinx and the horse we have on the White Horse. Some sort of worship of an animal life in both cases, and even in the dog's case that was included in the grave. So I mean, I'm trying to, as we all are, trying to get a feel for what they believed in, what they honoured, what they revered, and so.
One thing we talking about animals we touched on in the car earlier is it actually a horse? Is it? I mean, we all it's one of those you wouldn't believe what kind of questions you get as comments to those videos. It's great fun, and a lot of them just make you think a bit. Well, hang on a second, we've always assumed it's a horse. Nobody's told us. I mean, it doesn't. It's a very artistic representation of a horse.
It's not realistic enough to say,
It's very
of course, it's a
stylised,
horse.
yeah.
And some people said, "But look at it, it's a cat, or it's a fox." And I said, "No, this is bordering on conspiracy theories now. Maybe I'm just showing my age and not saying, well, hang on a second, how do we know it's a horse?" Well, I've read, for example, that horses had just become quite important at the boundary of Bronze Age and Iron Age. And so this could have been, the Uffington Castle could have been a horse breeding community, and the White Horse was just a billboard.
Yeah,
And then Charles said there's awfully few places you can actually see the horse as a horse from,
Yes, I think that's
except from the air.
And I think that is the key.
That is, yeah, exactly.
If you are creating something that, as Charles was saying, is painstakingly difficult to maintain, and to show. That is what always bothered me about his horse. The fact that it's so difficult to see all at once, until we arrived with our drones and
that's
our.
Right.
It's so difficult.
It was designed for who to see?
Yeah.
And some people think maybe it was the gods, because only in the 20th century could people really see it properly, because we had aeroplanes and drones. And
I mean, with our mindset, the most obvious thing, and bear in mind that's what you say in criminology, is look at the most obvious explanation, and that usually points you to the truth. For us, the most obvious thing is that it was created for the gods. But careful, is that just not our way of thinking?
Exactly, that's what my objection to the idea of the most obvious, because the most obvious is only real to your experience, my experience, Charles's experience, and our most obvious will be different based on our own. I mean, unfortunately, it's too relative. The most obvious is not most obvious for many people at the same time, if you think of it. So it is a very good point that it might have been for the gods, but who knows? I can't not put myself into their mind.
Why would it be put? When you're at the White Horse, you can't see anything. You're not far enough away. Then there are only 2 or 3 spots further down where you can actually start to see it. So why put all this effort into a horse that really can't be seen?
I mean, there's this lay-by from where you can see the shape.
Yeah.
But you almost have to know what it is, and then you can say, oh yeah, right, I can see that it's a horse. It's really from the air where it makes sense. Now that is not, all this mumbo jumbo about. Obviously it was aliens who put it there. No, I always say that 3,000 years ago, and think about Stonehenge. Our ancestors were not stupid when it came to geometry. Of course, they could create a horse on a hillside that would look like a horse from the sky.
Yeah,
they were perfectly capable of doing the maths.
But one thing that I think is inescapable, at least for the little we can see from the archaeology, is that it has a wider landscape around it. We cannot forget about. Now I don't know whether these people were horse breeders and that is their billboard, but we definitely have. Now we are adding to the pictures with many more excavations. We see that it is part of a number of settlements that were used and lived in that period. So clearly it wasn't just a group of random people that walked past the ridgeway and decided to put that picture there. That place is very much...
And that is one that I think that is an important result of all these excavations, beyond all these nitty-gritty scientific details of understanding isotope. A picture begins to emerge where this is a community, this is a group of people who lived in other locations, say Segsbury Camp,
and he's a wide
Castle,
wide
area,
yeah.
Living there at the same time. And I think we have, from the artifacts seen, I think we have clear signs of interaction between those communities.
Yeah, I mean, this is you can tell that they were using the same pottery. They were using the same way, the same dwellings, the same technologies.
Unlikely that they came up with it independently just by chance.
Iron Age material culture is very well spread out across the south and southwest of England. You find very, very similar. So we're not talking about a small area only. You have certain characteristics that are very well recognized across the country. But it is interesting to see that these settlements that we start seeing in this area are all along this ridgeway. where the horse is, and they all probably did at some point refer to it. I mean, there is a reason why they're there. It's not only the fact that they are wonderful valleys full of resources, natural resources, water, arable fields, etc., but there is also strategic reasons for their location there. Again, whether that was related to the ridgeway, whether that was related for the horse. To the horse, I don't know. Was the horse there before the settlements, or the settlements arrived before the horse?
Yeah, that brings me to another question.
I don't know about that.
I need to understand a bit the new OSL. In my mind, we've got. I think was it 1995, the breakthrough, as it were, in OSL dating on the White Horse.
I think something
where we finally understood this might be much older. It certainly isn't medieval. It certainly isn't Roman. Oh, it might have been just about Roman.
Yeah, according to the original dates, I think the latest possible date is 200 BC, which makes it just pre-Roman. So,
but the furthest possible is 1700.
1700.
And that is still the case. That is still what they believe.
I mean,
so
as I was saying the other day, I know that there are new dates being processed as we speak.
They're hoping by the end of the year to have a more exact
So is it
date.
worthwhile having a chat with? Is it still Dave Miles doing this, or you told me who it was?
Yeah, I mean, definitely Dave Miles might have an idea who is dealing with it.
Well, it's Oxford Archeology.
Oxford Archeology is
they'll know who in
contact
Oxford.
with.
Yeah.
But where there's no news telling us it's either older or it's not as old as we thought. So far, in my mind, it's about 3,000 years old. That sort of gives us
at the moment,
the most
yeah.
probable age. So
I think it's 3,000 plus or minus about
500, 700, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's well within the range of those people living in the area excavated.
Yes, I think another factor is to take into account the hill forts, meaning Uffington Castle and Segsbury, which have been excavated to some extent, but still remain a real mystery. That the first thing is, as I understand it, that with all the ramparts and so on, the assumption perhaps was that this was a place that they could go for refuge and live in and so on. But the archaeology doesn't seem to support that. These were places of residence. So they're a long way from water. So you couldn't really have a proper residential. So the question is, what were they used for? And this is still a mystery. Nobody actually knows.
I mean, more than a mystery now, I think archaeologists are accepting the fact that almost all of the suggestions made over the years, since they started studying hill forts, are now possibilities. And people are getting away from the idea that they needed to have one function. I mean, there is plenty of evidence, as you suggest, from Segsbury Castle, for example, that there were houses there. There were pits, the same type of pits that we found in the excavation that we did near Letcombe. And so there was definitely an element of habitation. They were, at least for parts of the years, at least at some point in their life, as for dwellings. Plenty of people suggest that there must have been large communities to build them. And what happened to these communities once they were built, if we don't see evidence of residency, evidence of others in there? I think it's because probably they might have been used as seasonal meeting points.
Or defence structures.
Other people suggest
when they were necessary.
That when there is a risk of invasion, etc., you go up the hill where there's a amazingly strategic locations, always on top of the hills, or in this case along the ridge.
But if you look at Segsbury, which is enormously big, if you had an attacking force there, you would have to have a huge defensive force to defend all the way around that circumference. So I don't think Segsbury looks to me And maybe Uffington has a very good defence.
It would have been a very good defence structure for a large defending force.
If you had big...
If you had a big force,
a lot
it would
of people,
be just
thousands of people.
Yeah. Also, don't forget that perhaps there weren't the large armies that we think of when we think of, we think of Roman armies, and we think of these legions moving and changing the landscape as they move. Maybe there wasn't quite that.
In which case, why build such an enormous
That's an interesting
thing?
thought, because I remember you writing in there that it all seems to have been a rather peaceful community. There were no signs of violent
the fact that
deaths.
These settlements were unenclosed.
Yeah.
And there was
So what we think, that might be the key. There was no... We don't see any evidence of organised warfare. But we do see a lot of evidence of those people. I mean, you just need to dig along a random trench and you find somebody. Just imagine what you will find a few hundred metres away from that trench. The whole area is full of archaeological evidence we haven't looked at yet.
Yeah. But the overall, my impression as an amateur of life at that time is that most of the people lived in the plain, and they used the hills for travel and maybe having special places for defence and so on. But the majority of people, like at Letkenbasset, were living in the plain near the water and so on.
It makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
And we are now seeing evidence of it. And our site in Letkenbasset is not the first one. There is another site, I can't remember the name now, just to the southwest of the Horse and the hill fort, which, again, an unenclosed settlement, just like the one we excavated near your house, Tower Hill.
Tower Hill, yes,
Yeah.
that's a very...
Tower Hill is another unenclosed settlement with similar dating to the settlement we excavated. We're looking at, early to Middle Iron Age. Our settlement is mostly Middle Iron Age, you were asking earlier. So we're looking at, a couple of hundred years.
Was this on
before.
the plain or up on the heights?
It's on the slope. towards the base of the plain.
Base.
So it's very, very similar to our site.
Yeah.
And again, not far from the hill fort, but at the same time not in the hill fort. So it's reasonable to think that these hill forts were, had some kind of specific reason.
Yeah.
Why might have not been one reason, if you see what I mean.
Yeah. Of course, Basset has the spring, has the water, which was a big attraction over thousands of years.
Yeah.
So I imagine Letkenbasset, if you dug the whole place up, there would be an enormous amount of
I'm sure there were. If you remember some of the talks I gave you in the village, I showed the geophysics for some of the fields on the other side of the roads that goes towards
other side
Chilbury.
of Holborn Hill, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the geophysics there look like as if someone excavated that field. There's so much stuff there. There's so many more roundhouses and pits. It looks almost as if one of our excavation plans is so obvious. Exactly. And which suggests either that the community we're looking at was much, much larger than the one we saw, or that perhaps the settlement shifts from one area to another, depending on how they use it, how they use the area, what animals they're... we can't tell until we
But I imagine,
put the shovel in the
as
ground.
a present, water is an all-important factor.
Absolutely. But there, I mean, we're still very close to the water.
Yes.
Just
but the hill forts are actually a long way from water.
I guess one of the first things that strike you about hill forts, and it came to my mind, I was filming up at Uffington Castle. Oh, yeah.
Just
right.
checking in case if nobody knocks at the door.
Okay, then we're fine. I didn't go in through one of the entrances because I wanted to have a specific look at some. So I climbed up the bank, and I realised, blimey, this is quite a climb. But you don't think it. But this double ditch and wall and ramparts, quite difficult. And then I commented it when we were walking around Segsbury camp. that this is much more difficult to get up to than you think. So imagine an attacker. It doesn't take much effort standing on top of it to just push them back down.
Exactly.
So maybe now in my mind, if you haven't got great armies, and I think that can be discounted pretty much from all the evidence we know. There were no thousands of people marching around in the Iron Age, conquering different parts. We see no evidence of that. But imagine a small group coming one way. It takes then also a relatively small group to stand atop that part of the rampart and push them back.
You could do that.
And you wouldn't, and maybe you say if you don't have the large armies, why would you need such a large area? Well, don't forget that you want to protect your animals, going back to the relevance the animals had in their lives. You know, if you have even a small herd and you want to make sure they have something to survive whilst you keeping them enclosed.
Might want it to be big enough for them to graze even.
So there's a lot of things that could have... but yeah, it's still a big question mark. Very fascinating one. But I think opening our minds to different options is the way to understand these places, because we're never going to be able to get into an Iron Age person's mind. But they left a lot of rubbish
I just
behind.
said to Charles, one thing we might, if one day we find a piece of pottery with an exact image of the White Horse on it, then that would be the smoking gun almost, wouldn't it? And it's not completely
But
impossible.
apparently this stylized horse has been found on coins in France and other places. Something rather similar. So they might have brought over this part of their culture.
Yeah, I mean that's the other thing. There are in the late Bronze Age and early Iron Age and so on, there are very recurrent artistic themes make you think there is a shared culture across the Mediterranean.
I call it the extended Mediterranean area, including the British Isles.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you do have people that recognise themselves within certain cultural elements. And this is probably why in the 18th, 19th century we were talking about the Celts. They're very vague definitions. We don't know exactly
what the Celts were.
What the Celts were. But the reason why we were talking about the Celts is because there is so much recognisable, so many recognisable elements, cultural elements from one end of Germany to the other end of Ireland that you must recognise these things. Whether it was just because people travelled a lot and they shared the cool things that we end up seeing in our excavations, I don't know. But I suspect there was quite a lot of shared understanding of how the life worked, etc. So there is an element of cultural sharing.
Just in case we get kicked out, there's one thing. Constant maintenance. That's the first thing when you look at the horse, you read a bit about it, you go, hang on a second. So you mean that somebody must have been taking care of this at least once every 20 years for the past 3,000 years, and that is possibly the most fascinating.
Yeah, it is extraordinary.
First thought, is that really the case? Is that something we just keep quoting because it's so fascinating, or is it? I mean, let's say don't do anything for 100 years, it's gone.
Oh no, I think much quicker. In 7 or 10 years it would be overgrown.
I think that gives you a sense of how these kind of symbols, landscape symbols, take over people's interest and fascination regardless of whether they were the makers or not. I mean, if you are... a medieval person that was born right under the horse and you see it starting to get overgrown. As a grown man, you see that this is fading away, etc. Perhaps you probably have your belief attached to that horse just as much as the Iron Age person that helped building it.
Maybe a bit more respect of old cultures than we think we give them credit for today.
Yeah, I really don't know whether it becomes something that you feel as yours.
Yes.
Therefore, you're not necessarily respecting your ancestors or Perhaps you're respecting some gods that you think are benefiting from that. I don't know. It's
fascinating, and because so if 7 years, maybe 20 years, which means well within one generation, you have to do some maintenance. So why then was the meaning of it completely lost? Total detachment. Nobody knows who these people were, why it was created, anything, and yet it kept being maintained. So the coincidence of it being maintained and the information being lost, I think that's what's difficult for me to understand, because maintenance periods are within one generation.
Yeah.
So at some point there must have been someone doing the next maintenance step and not bothering to ask his mum or dad why he's doing it.
Yeah,
it was done communally.
Oh.
Yeah,
certainly
exactly.
Since about the 16th century. Every 7 years there'd be a festival. People would come from all over England, to scour it, I think. So
there've been even
so
books
it was a
about
very
it,
established tradition, certainly from for the last 500 years, and presumably before.
At least it was done before.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is that the question is there because it's not easy to answer. At least there is not one answer, because clearly there were probably population reshuffles. So when the Romans arrived, what was left of those people that were living there when the Romans arrived? Were they still there? Were they removed forcefully because of the... What part? I got the feeling that something so influential in the landscape where you live will leave the mark in you, regardless whether you are the person that made it or not, regardless whether you got any memories or any respect for the people that made this landscape symbol. And you will this symbol will take a large space in your life, in your beliefs, in your mental acceptance of your area, and that's why you get this continuity in the maintenance. As for why we lose the original culture, that's might have been a choice at some point. So say, for example, at some point after the Roman period or during the Roman period, some of the people that were maintaining this horse, were Christian and didn't want to associate themselves with the pagans that were there before them.
One of the things what struck me, I was reading something written by, I think, a 17th century scientist, or I don't know if he's a scientist, but anyhow, his observation, there were two wonders of the world in England, maybe Britain, which is Stonehenge and the White Horse. And I think it's interesting to compare the two, because Stonehenge is a bunch of huge stones that just stay there. So it's very solid, but the White Horse is completely fragile and could disappear in a few years. It's just, and so the wonder that Stonehenge still exists is because it's a big bunch of stones. But the wonder is far greater that the White Horse still exists. So that's more of a wonder of the world, if you like, in some senses, than Stonehenge, because it's so fragile. It could have disappeared thousands of years ago.
It reflects much more the presence of humans and their way of thinking over a really, really long period.
That's right, yes.
Whereas Stonehenge, the fascination of Stonehenge is the sheer effort of putting it there, which is amazing. But yeah, it's equally important, but completely different.
Yeah, that's right. So you have to take into account a whole, why do humans do this? Why did they do it? Why do they keep it up? So it involves a whole understanding of human nature, whereas Stonehenge doesn't, in a sense. I mean, we have to try and plunge it.
But there you go. It's there's a lot of questions, very few answers.
But I think the conclusion is that we are inching closer to understanding those people. We know there was a big community. there are huge numbers of dwellings. The fact alone that we just have a small pipeline region, and we dig there, and immediately we find something fascinating.
Yeah.
So the whole Ridgeway area was highly populated in the say Middle Iron Age, around the time there also.
At least in this area.
And there was a lot of interaction between people. And we also know there was interaction with people much further afield. I'm thinking again about your
traveled,
isotope analysis
moved.
on the lady in the grave. We learned that she possibly came from Scandinavia.
One of the
at least the very far edges of
yeah.
northeastern England.
Yeah.
So there was more movement, and were larger communities, and burial rites, and we talked about the grave structure with the lady and the child underneath and the dog, things that were no coincidence. So there was a lot going on, and the White Horse definitely just doesn't appear out of the blue. It is. We get a better feeling now for not understanding why exactly it is what it is, but we get a better feeling now for why it is there and how it could have come about. And we still don't know for sure it's a horse.
That's true. There you go.
I love the fact that these are all still great mysteries, as is life itself, let's face it.
Absolutely.
So again, thank you very, very much for your time.
Thank you.
Yes, it was.
I'm sorry I couldn't give you a final answer.
No, that's why it's worthwhile keeping track of these things.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, and thank you, Paolo,
these things switch themselves on.
Particularly for the great work you did around Lake Combasset.
Oh.
It has changed the village in I think, quite a good way.
That's good.
That we are not just sort of interlopers on a bit of ground, but we are, we've inherited the ground of people who've been living for thousands of years.
Great.
And a lot of people think like that now. I do, and my neighbours and so on.
That is a key about trying to understand the past, reading the past, having a vague interest in the past. All of a sudden, I was too. All of a sudden, the path that you've been walking all your life, when you start realizing that it was, created and used by people just like you and me thousands of years ago, takes a completely different light, and is going back to your question about why the horse kept being maintained. It's
the same kind of thing.
The fascination. You don't have a horse in Combasset, and you're still saying that the village is has a different atmosphere because you talk about these things. Well, can you imagine? I think it's important because ultimately what we are is a result of what they have been. all of them, all these thousands of years of history.
Yes, we haven't just popped up.
Yeah.
We're a long chain of life, and that feeling actually is good for you. It's a good way of looking at things and feeling things. So thank you for your sterling work at our little village.
It's great to see interested people, because that gives value to what we do. Because then on a daily basis, we're just doing a job.
Oh, I do. Yes, I do. Yes, it's such a huge amount of detailed work, isn't it?
It makes quite a lot, and
it becomes a bit of a grind.
This kind of publication can be very technical, but this is what we're required to do, and it is from these that then people that are better at telling stories than I am can take their information and tell the story.
In total, I think there may be about 20 pages of summary and introduction prose, which make the rest worthwhile browsing. So you've got both. In my mind, you've got the big picture. Yeah. And then you've got all the detail. So I'm not sorry about having purchased it. Although it is not an easy read.
No, it's not an easy read.
Absolutely.
It wasn't meant to be.
Yeah. Yes, actually, we're not commissioned to make an easy one. But yeah, no, it's important because ultimately those few pages of summary or introduction at the beginning need to be based on facts that are as solid as it gets, and only thanks to all the boring bits in the middle that we can ascertain that they are solid.
And at the same time, you shouldn't write all the other things that come to your mind, which are a bit more
exactly. Without any evidence. Exactly. So, but yeah, cool. Thank you very much.
All right,
Thank you.
Thank you.